Hi friends, welcome to Coordinate, and today we want to proceed in our next session to understand what data types are readily available when it comes to JavaScript. Well, when you hear the keyword data type or the word data type to say, not a keyword, because keywords, of course, we can tell that they are keywords when it comes to programming and anything related to that. So when you hear the word data type, you should think of them as simply a kind of thing that can be placed inside a variable. Like we said, a variable is simply a container. So a container, it's more like they are asking, okay, yes, we have a container. If we say var, variable a, yeah, we have a container which is a. Now, what type of data can we place inside a? The two major types of data types that we'll talk about when it comes to JavaScript, though in our next session we'll talk about what are called objects, and in the other session we'll talk about arrays, which are also types of data types to say. We'll talk about in this session the two important data types. We are saying the two important because they also make up the next data types that we'll talk about. One of the data type is called a string. Of course, we are saying strings, and another type of a data type is simply a number. We are saying, of course, number. This is simply the actual implementation we've been using, the actual source code we've been using from the start. I have just implemented a basic CSS and of course some elements of HTML. This is why we say learn HTML and of course basics of CSS before you proceed to JavaScript. And if we are to see, this is the actual implementation of the actual web page. If you will refresh, of course, string and number. This is what we'll talk about. This is simply a Hoover effect and anything related to that, which is CSS. So data types, string and number. How can we work with the strings, and what are strings to say? A string is a sequence of characters. For example, I can say, I love coordinate. This is a sequence of characters. I mean, these are alphanumeric characters. Hence, we can say they are strings. A string, more like a string, the actual string, the way we understand the keyword in English. A string, simply a sequence of character. And to present the strings as a data type in JavaScript, the strings, before assigning them to a variable, we need to place them inside the double quotes. And this is where we can say, okay, I love coordinate. We even end with a semicolon. If we don't want to, of course, place the actual strings inside the double quotes, then we can place them inside the single quotes. Immediately you do that, then you can, of course, place a string, the actual words that you want to assign to a variable. We were saying a variable is more like a container. So if we were asked, okay, what type of content do you want to place inside this container created, which is container A? Definitely we want to place in the content that is based on a string as a data type. If we were to print out now the content in A, most definitely we will see I love coordinate being printed out. I love coordinate, and this is the actual thing that has been printed out. Of course, I don't know if you can see DVD and the like, color sciencey. Of course, this is not too good. I can tell because I don't have the eye for design. Most definitely. Let's progress again. So this is what we've said about string as a type of data type. Now, at the same time, take note that instead of just printing out the content in A, if we want, we can of course print out a string minus sending it to a variable, and that can definitely be done. Instead of printing out A, we can say, okay, I want to print out, hey, how are you? Will this be printed out? Well, the answer is a no. If we go back on our actual web browser, I refresh, you can tell that it's not printing out anything. Why isn't this printing out the actual string, hey, how are you? Well, the answer is simple. It's because we've not placed them inside the double quotes. Hence, strings, whether we are assigning them to a variable or whether we want to print them directly minus assigning them to a variable, they need to be in between the double quotes. If we go back now, most definitely once we refresh, we'll see that we'll print out, hey, how are you? So these are what we call string. A string, a type of data type or a type of value that contains multiple characters, alphanumeric characters, also including numbers. I mean, if we were to add a number in between, of course, these alphanumeric characters would have printed out, for example, let's say, okay, 12 will also be taken as a string, not a number. Why? Because it's in between the double quotes. Once we refresh, hey, how 12 are you? Of course, I don't know what type of English is that. We are just doing the demonstrations and anything related to that. This is what we can do with the strings and anything related to that. Now, another type of a data type that we want to talk about is simply a data type which is called a number. And there is, of course, a difference in terms of operation on how a number needs to be assigned to a variable or on how a number can be printed out directly. For example, we can say, okay, let's create another variable which is variable b, var for variable creation, and then we can say variable b is equal to, of course, we won't say variable b should be in between the double quotes and then we assign the actual numbers that we want to assign. No. Such doesn't happen when it comes to numbers as types of data types in JavaScript. A number shouldn't be in double quotes. A number shouldn't be in single quotes. A number needs to be outside, alone. It should stand out alone. 57. And then we implement a semicolon because each statement should, of course, terminate with a semicolon, though we are not saying. You see, of course, some other programming languages and even in JavaScript, especially online, some statements they don't terminate with a semicolon. That can work, but of course standardization and of course good programming practice, please terminate them with a semicolon. If we are to print out now the content in B, we'll just say, okay, print out B. Immediately when we print out B, when we go on our browser, immediately we refresh, 57 will be printed out. It is out, printed out as a number because it was not in double quotes. Hence also JavaScript, the actual script, as the elements have denoted, and of course JavaScript has taken note that this is a type of data type which is associated to a number. Even when we want to print out directly, we don't need to add, of course, the double quotes when we just want to print out the number, unless if maybe that number is part of a string as a data type. But else, all we should do is simply print out. Okay, I want to print out using inner HTML and print out on the actual element which has the ID, of course, ID underscore 1, which is a paragraph as we've implemented in HTML. Immediately we go on our browser, refresh the page. Immediately we do that, 90 will be printed out. And like we said, there are some operations that can happen in between different data types, which is a string and a number, or just in between the same data types. We can say, of course, for example, we can say b plus 90. We expect, of course, to print out the expression that is in between 57 plus 90. We've talked about the plus things as an operator and anything related to that. If we come here, we refresh, we print out 147. That is what we get when we add 90 to 57. So that's what can happen. At the same time, we've learned about the concatenating as an operator, as the concatenator, which is the same plus and anything related to that. So meaning, if we want, we can say, okay, print out the content in A, and immediately you print out the content in A, I want the actual content to be concatenated, or should I say to be in conjunction with this string, which I will print out directly, which is saying and programming. Of course, programming is funny. Immediately we do that, we can go on our browser and we'll see I love coordinate being concatenated, of course, to the keywords, and programming is funny. So all the basics that we've learned so far, we can apply them when it comes to, of course, JavaScript data types, which is a number and a string. Let's progress on another type or another special type of a data type, which can be a combination of a number, numbers and numbers, or strings and strings in our next session. Let's understand what objects are as a data type and how they can be implemented. Please don't forget to subscribe, and you are on Coordinate.